Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Holtby 6 podcast. I'm back with two very special guests tonight. A topic, a subject that I'm really kind of interested to talk about this evening. Really keen to get some ideas, some understanding, a bit more awareness about the subject as well. So I'd love to introduce Mike and Tom from Villa and Proud. All right, boys, how you doing?
Good, thanks, mate. Good.
Good. I'll just let you guys talk really quickly. Introduce yourself. So if we start with you, Tom, what's your role at the organisation? What do you do? What's Villa and Proud?
Yes, so I'm on the committee with Mike, and my role is I'm the Youth Digital and Development Officer, which is my new role. So we're going to look at how to engage younger people as well, kind of in that 18 to 25 bracket, who I think quite often get missed by a lot of stuff that community groups do in football. And yeah, just see how we can develop and grow, try and make sure we reach as many people as possible and help everyone, because if the further we reach, the more people we help, and helps us achieve that mission, which as Sam always likes us to tell everybody, is to empower, support and build LGBTQ plus inclusion for players, staff and fans at Aston Villa. So the closer we can get to achieving that aim, the better, really.
Lovely. Thanks, Tom. And Mike?
Hey, Tom, I'm glad you memorised the mission statement there, because I've completely got out of my head. Don't tell Sam that. I'm the so I look after kind of all events, stuff going on at Villa and Proud. So it's got Pride coming up at the end of September, which is going to be huge. Really just trying to get as many people involved, talking, chatting, whether it's through social media, whether it's through WhatsApp, whether it's through emails, everything like that. So it's just really getting everyone engaging and building a little community, really, which I think we kind of need in football. So it's pretty important that we have that.
Lovely, I totally agree. And Villa and Proud has been growing quite substantially and quite quickly, really. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that I first saw it, first understood a little bit about it, spoke to Sam, spoke to Tom. And was really keen to kind of support it. And I think the club have really supported it as well, haven't they? The club have really got on board and promoted and stuck behind what you want to do and the visions of Villa and Proud. So why did it? What was the reason it came about, Tom? What was Sam's kind of purpose with it? Apart from the obvious, what was the reason for Villa and Proud?
Yeah, well, Sam's been doing really good work with Charlton Athletic with his partner Gary, who's a Charlton fan, and they play for Charlton Invicta, and they work a lot with the EDI department down there. And Villa approached Sam in November 2018, so it was the 5-5 against Nottingham Forest, which is nice because it's nice and memorable. And started setting up the supporters network to try and just connect LGBTQ plus Villa fans, because we see in those sorts of groups starting to grow in the Premier League and now further throughout the country, and it's so important to make sure that people don't feel isolated and they've got a community, especially as we touch on soon with the mental health impact. I think it's absolutely huge to feel like you've got a community, you've got support, you've got people who have had similar experiences to yourself, and you're not alone in that. So and if we talk about discrimination and things like that, I'm sure, and that if you face discrimination, that there's always allies and things standing with you, so you don't have to face that alone. That's probably our main goal, really.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I mean it's fantastic, and it is so great to see it taking off so well, and rightly so. It sounds crazy that something like this needs to take off. It should just be normal day-to-day life, where we don't have to keep raising awareness, and it's just accepting from everybody. And we live in a society where everyone is allowed to be whoever the hell they want to be, without any of this. But it is what it is. And it's just really great to see the hard work that you're both doing and the rest of the team. I know Sarah Breslin quite well. She talks about it quite a lot and does quite a lot of work with you, doesn't she? So it's amazing. So, OK, let's dive into the deep end then. So LGBTQ community and the impact that being in that community has on well-being and mental health, whether it man, female, whatever identity you choose to exist as. What is the impact? What has been the impact over the last year, 2 years, probably beyond 10 years, 20 years? What's the impact, Mike? What are we dealing with currently?
I think let's go back a couple of years. I think lockdown kind of hit a lot of people, and I think when you're already kind of feeling alone, and some people will be feeling that kind of aloneness in a sense, I think it's certainly with Villa and Proud anyway, seemed to we just grew and grew massively through lockdown, really, because I think a lot of us were feeling alone, and you know, I'd recently moved to Birmingham, not really knowing anyone up here, and it's a very weird time, and and I think it really helped us all kind of pull together. But in terms of the mental health, I think, you know, you do feel alone sometimes. You do feel that there's not many people you can talk to, and I think that's why, you know, groups like Villa and Proud are really important. It's weird that I wouldn't feel comfortable being myself at a football match, and I'm not saying I go to a football match being, you know, I know a lot of people who wouldn't go to a football match holding hands with their partner, just for the abuse they get, and single. To me, that's just the starting block. You know, you have to build down that we all have this one thing in common, which is Aston Villa. We're all going to a football match for the same reason. We're all allies in that kind of way, in that terms of we're all going for the same reason. Yet we choose to turn on each other and that's just it. It's an odd mentality that I won't ever get my head around, because I just don't get it. Yeah,
Tom.
Yeah, I think I massively echo what Mike says. You know, we hear so much how members just wouldn't feel comfortable with their partners, and it's not necessarily from that we actually would get abuse, which I think it does happen, but also it's the fear of that happening, that it's that stigma, and I think we haven't quite broken that stigma in football yet, which I think we kind of have a little bit more in other sports. And I think it's that kind of, you already have a bit of a social isolation to an extent. You know, you're not, you know, if you're growing up in friendship groups and things like that, you're not going to be able to relate your experiences to a lot of people who you grow up with in that way. You already feel different, and you already feel like you're probably a different part of society from everybody else. And I think when that comes to football and the tribal environment that we see, I think that can kind of exacerbate that. It become quite scary for some people, and especially, you know, if we've got trans members and things like that who potentially they can't just go and be themselves, and they feel like if they identify as their true gender that they identify as publicly, that, you know, they could get hate, and people will pick them up on that. Because I think I feel almost like if I wanted to go to the football and I wanted no one to know about my sexuality, whatever, I can do that. I can just walk out. But some people who have maybe more visible identities, it's not so easy to hide away, which you shouldn't have to hide away, but that is what we feel like sometimes you have to do, and that's what we want to really try and tackle, I suppose.
Are we, I think in a moment I'll break down the two, but are we dealing with a much more severe impact on mental health for the more newly introduced members of this community than we are your typical gay men and lesbian women? Are we dealing with another level when we talk about trans? Are we talking, you
100%.
know, go on, Mike, go for it, mate. You know what I'm going with this.
You know, I think with the trans community, it's very, you know, it's kind of like Tom's just said, you know, I could hide being gay. Being gay is not necessarily a physical attribute. You know, I can put that away, I can put it in a locker, I can do that. But with the trans community, it's obviously a very physical thing, and it seems like, you know, it's especially the last few months, we're in a world where it seems hating on trans people is point scoring in the world, and it's horrible. You know, we've got so many trans people in the Villa and Proud group chats, and I know Tom, myself know some of them very well, and it's just horrible seeing that someone can't, you know. The fact for me is that I kind of look at the people who are, you know, the trans people should be able to go out and be themselves, you know, be who they want to be. And the fact that someone will go out their way to cause negativity to someone else's life and they have no impact on that person's life, it's nothing to do, like, you know, I could walk down the street, I could walk past a trans person, I've got to go out of my way to make a horrible comment to that person. And then people are then choosing to go out their way to say something to these people. And it's, you know, that's just, it's odd. It's really, really strange to me that someone would go out their way to really diminish a very already targeted community.
Definitely something I see that, and I hear that, and I feel that pressure for those in the trans community. You know, it's repulsive, the abuse that many of them get for simply trying to be who they believe they are and who they need to be. You know, Absolutely. We're not all born into this world as the typical man, woman. That's how we're going to be forever. That isn't the way it is, you know. So,
and it's quite scary for for doing what we do, where you see the impact it has on people, and you see the impact that this rhetoric has, and it's this rhetoric that's based in absolutely no facts. And you look at a lot of the arguments that are made, they massively hark back to the arguments that were made against gay people in the 1980s. It's kind of like that history repeating itself. And it's so frustrating, because if I bring that back to the mental health side of things, there was a survey that came out a few years ago, and it was that nearly half of trans people had actually considered taking their own life in the previous 12 months. And if we're talking 12 months as well, that's not at some point in their lifetime, which would be horrendous enough as it is. But if you've got a community that's kind of suffering that much because of what society is kind of pointing at them with, and then you're just exacerbating that again and again and again, and pushing that more and more, I think it's just quite scary, because at the minute I think they probably are one of the more vulnerable groups in society, and that's why we need to be there as allies.
Yeah, totally agree.
If a really positive thing was, kind of last weekend there was over 20,000 people in London for Trans Pride. And that to me is a real good sign that there's a lot of people supporting trans people. The lack of sign is that there's been literally zero media coverage of it. I think any protest or any kind of thing going on in London with 20,000 people would certainly pick up a lot of media coverage, and it's been very silent. And I think it's just news, current affairs, things. It's a very hard world at the minute for trans people, and that just sums it up. We've had a very good, very positive event happen. Very peaceful.
Where's the coverage? Where's the positive promotion of it? Where's the
100%?
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about trans people and the kind of their involvement in this community, and can we define between us, but you two really more so than me, who are we talking about within this community? What are we dealing with the LGBTQ plus? Because I know for a lot of people, when you're not involved in it and you don't read up on it, and maybe you haven't got an interest, or you are one of those that's a bit unsure and a bit cagey about that topic, who are we talking about within this community to define, who is it?
Yeah, it's obviously a really broad umbrella, and I think that there is an argument that I do see people make about boxing people all together, but actually the struggle for rights, I suppose, over the last however many decades has been fought by lesbians, gays, bisexual people, transgender people all together, and that's actually even before transgender as an identity was kind of what they labelled it. Right. Trans people have been involved since the very beginning. There were trans people fighting at or rioting at Stonewall, in the 60s, and I think, and I know that the amount of letters and things like that, people get all kind of wound up about it, but it's simply that's why personally I quite like the plus that we put in there, because it's basically saying if you're lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer or questioning, so that's any other identity. Okay. So that's if you don't feel like you fit into a specific label in terms of gender identity or sexuality. And then the plus is just if none of those labels really fit you, if you don't really need to be boxed. And there are so many other identities that are included in that. But yeah, I think the key is it's just anyone who probably isn't cisgender, which means biologically born male, female, that's how you identify, or straight. Anyone else is kind of part of that community, I guess.
So do you anticipate, sorry, Mike, do you anticipate that kind of acronym extending itself over as time goes on? Do we see that changing? Because it has changed, because it was just LGBT and then it was LGBTQ. Now it's the plus. So are we moving forward?
I think the plus kind of just
finishes it,
puts an end to it, to be fair, because I think it's not so much like Tom says about the letters anymore. It's about, saying, if you feel different, if you don't feel like a straight male, there's someone for you, there's a group for you, there's people there you can go and talk to, there's, and it's really kind of saying these are the kind of the four main ones, I guess you could call them, or five main ones. But if you feel any difference, if you feel you feel bisexual, but you feel a little bit different than bisexual, it's saying however you feel, there's a community for you. Yeah. And I think that's, we, like you say, we shouldn't have to really nail down, 15 letters in it. That shouldn't be a thing we have to do, because, it's saying okay, we understand that everyone is a bit different, and there's asexual, there's people who don't fancy anyone, there's people who aren't remotely interested in anyone, and it's still okay to be like that. And it's just saying that here's a space for you.
Yeah, I love that. I do love that. So if we're going to, so you mentioned earlier, Tom, just about kind of suicide rates and the impact that the kind of what I'm trying to get out here, the impact that being a part of this community can have on someone's mental health and well-being, and seeing suicide rates. Are we seeing that specifically within our fan base? Is that something that you're seeing more in our fan base, or are we talking more generic across the community, across the nation, across the world,
Yeah, I mean, we obviously we quite open. People as a community talk quite openly in our group about various struggles people are having. I couldn't put figures on it for our members specifically, because obviously it's personal to everybody. But I definitely think that if our membership is representative of the community, I think we do have a real kind of problem on our hands, and it's a problem that in the mainstream kind of media isn't tackled at all. And I think there's a lot of complex factors, and I think that's why it's not tackled. I think people are scared to even try and open that can of worms, because you're looking at potentially everything from people just questioning their sexuality or their gender identity, fear of rejection from friends, family, whatever. Like I know before I came out, that was weighing on my shoulders for so much, and I think people don't understand that. With like you talk about people like Jake Daniels, who's just come out as the first top flight openly gay male footballer for decades, and a lot of the comments were, well, yeah, but why do people care? What's the problem? And you sort of think, yeah, that's great. We don't really want people to care as such. We want to get on with our lives, but actually it's a reality that until you do open up like that, there is that fear of what if everyone treats me completely differently just because of that kind of aspect of myself. And I think especially in young people, in like people going through, what it's like being a teenager anyway, add that kind of to the mix. That's quite a dangerous combination to an extent. And you add kind of the fear from society, and like we said earlier, that feeling like you're not quite part of society. And that's why these communities are so important, because I think it is so complex. But yeah, some of the statistics are quite scary, really.
I think it is getting better. I think I look back to when I was at school and kind of there was kind of one kid who was a bit flamboyant, so he just got ridiculed for, I don't even know if he was gay, like he might not have been, and it was very, very, it just wasn't a thing. People people obviously were back then, but just not nowadays. I think growing up, it's probably a little bit, sort of say, easier. I don't think it's ever easy, but it's I think it's more acceptable now growing up. But we need to build on that, and we need to, that's just a starting point. It is becoming more acceptable now, but you've then got the other end of the spectrum where it's just frowned upon and things. And
what is it that kind of are the key fundamentals of why this is so hard for the LGBT? Is it culture? Is it generations? Is it language? Is it society? Is it what is it specifically? Do you think
it's a bit of everything, to be honest? I think it kind of embraces a bit of everything. Football is a very tribal sport. Football is a very mob mentality kind of lad. I love football to bits. I love going to football. I think some football crowds can be some of the best places to be at times. I think that I've been at Villa Park, I've been at away games where it's just sometimes I've been feeling really down. I've been on a real, crap time. I've been feeling pretty awful, and I've just gone to the Villa, and it's really brought me back up. And the mentality that football crowds, they have a very, very good place. Football crowds, they can really improve mentality. They can really improve your mental health. On the flip side, you will get times where it's tricky, and like we just said, I think the trans side, it's very physical. But yeah, that's for me. I think I've seen comments, on a pretty much a game by game basis. I've seen people walk past fans and give them abuse, and they're not even gay. They're not even bi. They're not even anything. They've just, someone's walked past who's, just been called a faggot, called it, whatever. And sorry to use, that kind of wording, but
no, mate.
people have just shouted that, and they might not even be gay, and it's just that, you know, there's a really good side to football culture, and there's just a very bad side to football culture, and it's trying to get allies on board, get, you know, people like yourself, you know, and people to understand what an ally is, and I don't think a lot of people do.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. And so, you know, that kind of brings us to the Villa aspect, I guess, is what are we as a fan base like with this? Are we a generally supportive fan base of this, or do we still have dark corners of our fan base that need to pull their finger out their arse and do some research and, you know, and come to terms with this? Like, where are we with that? Where are we? Nice and raw. Where are we with that?
Yeah, I mean, we're like the fan base is going to be a bit of a cross section of society, you know, and there are definitely fans and sections of fans that have bigoted views, if we're going to just be quite frank, you know. And I think in the same way that we see it in society, there's great fans, there's people who are really supportive, we've got loads of allies. There are people that are ignorant, and that's not through a fault of their own. Some people who genuinely don't know, and if they want to learn, then that's great, because that for us is absolutely brilliant, because if we can help people, bring people on board and teach people, and educate people, that's education is just so powerful. And I think it's almost more powerful than just talking to people that are already on board, you know. It's that changing hearts and minds kind of thing, but there are also people that you're never going to educate because they're not open to it. But it's about creating that community and that kind of togetherness that is strong enough that those people don't matter anymore.
Yeah. Do you think that there are individuals who are unsure of who they want to be, who find themselves in that corner where they're against it as a face and a mask to hide actually who they want to try and be, and are scared to come out?
Yeah, 100%. I've you know, I kind of you know, there's one or two people I know, you know, who are very unsure about, you know, kind of who they are, but you know, they're you get involved in a bit of a pack mentality at football, and you kind of have to play up to a role almost. And there's like I say, there's a couple of people who have, you know, 2 or 3 I know that have confided in myself about, you know, their thoughts and feelings. And I think people worry that they're part of this, you know, straight mentality and this football going mentality and things. And so when they start having these thoughts and curiosities, I guess, they don't know how to deal with it. And it becomes a lot harder to deal with it because you've almost got to play up to this character that you've become, you know. And so I think I've spoken, you know, the people I've spoken to are, you know, very, very open and just don't know what to do. And it's, you know, I think it's that's a football fan kind of, you know, side. You're almost trained from a young age to be this, you know, football fan.
Yeah.
And none of that training comes accepting people for what they look like or who they are.
Yeah. So you've just said there they don't know what to do, Mike. That leads lovely into the next kind of discussion, really. So from your own personal experiences, the struggles that you've both been through with your journey to where you are now, what do people do? How can someone look after their well-being and protect their mental health by trying to do the right thing? What advice do you give to someone who's maybe in that position where they're not sure what to do next? They're feeling something, but they're not quite sure what to do or how to get, you know, around it.
I think it's maybe don't put too much pressure on yourself. You know, you don't have to figure out who you are tomorrow. You know, there's God knows how long left in your lives, and you've got a long time to figure this out. I only came out when I was 29. You know, it took me a long time, and I had no idea before that. I was, you know, kind of happy with someone for a long time. You know, a female for a long time, and I had no idea. And you know, some people I talk to come out when they're 35, 40. You know, and there's so much pressure to say you must put yourself into this box very early on in life, you know, whether it's even through education, you know, you've got to pick your career when you're 15, you've got to, you know, do all that. And it moves on to, you know, kind of your sexuality, you know, you kind of like, well, I'm starting to feel a bit like this, so I must be this, you know, I that guy's quite attractive, I must be gay. And so I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about it. And I think the kind of advice I'd give to a lot of people would be to just take some time to figure it out. And, you know, don't feel like you're alone. Don't feel like that there's no one there to support you and help you. There's what you're going through. Thousands of people have already gone through exactly the same as what you're going through. So it's not, you're not alone. You're not by yourself, and it's just for them people to know where to go and who to talk to.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks, Mike. Tom, you going to add to that, mate?
Yeah, I mean, I totally echo that as well, and I think my kind of personal experience was really quite almost the opposite of Mike's, where I kind of knew I was gay from a really young age. Then I kind of suppressed it, and I say this shows how young it was, that when I actually eventually first came out to someone, I was 14, so that's still very, very early.
Yeah.
And actually, from a personal point of view, I'd say that was almost too early, because I then went through a few more years of I wasn't confident in myself in many ways, as teenagers just aren't, and facing a lot of kind of, as someone who I was probably one of the only openly gay people in the school, that's quite a big thing that I don't think at the time I realised would have been, for me, such a big thing to try and deal with. And I think it's already a lot better than it used to be. I know it is, from the conversations I have, considering the length of time that's passed. I think we're progressing really quickly. But yeah, mate, honestly, you talk about, and I was talking about pride and things like that. I used to hate it when that time of year came around, because I felt like the spotlight was on me and I wasn't confident in myself. And I think that's the main thing for me. My advice to anyone would be, don't, like Mike says, don't rush it. If you feel like you're hiding yourself, and what it got to also with me was I then went the other way with work and things like that, and it got to the stage where in my job I didn't tell anyone originally because I didn't want to be the gay guy, and then it became a thing because I hadn't told anybody, and then you have to lie about it to try and not tell anybody, and it becomes a challenge. And I think it's finding that balance for you that is best for your own mental health. So if that's not coming out yet because you're not ready, don't feel pressured into coming out. But also, if hiding yourself really is having a mental impact, which it can really weigh down on people, find those people that you can confide in. And even if that's, if you're not surrounded by a kind of loving, potentially family or friend group or whatever, there are always people out there. There are charities out there. There's groups like ours that, if someone comes to us anonymously, or they want to be anonymous, then they absolutely can be. We understand what some of these issues and some of these stigmas are, and I think obviously for me as well, it's so important to tell people that if they really are struggling with their mental health, go see someone who's a professional, because we can help people, but we can't solve everything, because there are professionals out there, LGBTQ plus inclusive therapists, things like that as well, who can really, really help you unpack those feelings, because we can't face all of our complex feelings on our own. And I think that goes for everybody, but especially in the LGBTQ plus community, when you see, like we were talking about earlier, the figures we see.
Yeah, lovely.
The thing for me is that I've always said you shouldn't have to in life come out, and I think like Tom just mentioned there, every time you start a new job, every time you meet a new friend, every time you meet someone new, you come out. You have to come out, and that's already a hard enough process, at the minute, to have to come out to someone. And the common stigma if you start a new job, or have you got a missus kind of thing, and it's like, well, how do I let's go back and forward on that one. But for me, I'd love a world where no one had to come out. I'd love a world where we didn't have to label ourselves LGBTQ plus and all of that. I'd love a world where everyone could just understand everyone and tolerate everyone and get on with life. And obviously that's far too much wishful thinking in my life. But if someone turns up to the pub and they say, I've got a boyfriend now, it should just be fine and accepting, and that's just me. What I'd like in the world.
I think what you're saying is bang on, mate. And like I said right at the beginning of the podcast, it was, for me, that's exactly what I'd love this to be like in life, where you haven't got to keep raising awareness and working your asses off day in, day out to ensure that you're getting a message home, and you're trying to support people who are going through these difficult challenges or discovering themselves and going on these complex journeys. We shouldn't have to do that, but we live in a world whereby we are, and I don't think that's going to stop. And I think the big thing for me is, and one of the reasons why I really wanted you on the Hope B6 podcast was because, for me, when I deal with mental health, or I support people with their mental health, and have done for 15 years, I've never really had to consider or take into account other issues that they might have going on. But for me, this is a prime example of one of those contexts where there isn't just mental health to look at, because, you know, we're also dealing with another very unknown, taboo, stigma topic too. So I can't imagine how difficult things might be for someone who perhaps already has an existing mental health issue or struggles with their well-being, plus trying to find themselves in a community of LGBTQ plus, you know? So you're dealing with two such powerful and unknown entities. You know, the community around you a lot of the time don't understand mental health. They don't know what that term means. They describe mental health as someone who's dangerous or weird or gay, as we've heard, you know, that term used for someone that's got a mental health or a mental illness, you know, oh, gay boy, you know, all of that disgusting vulgar language. They're dealing with that, and then they're dealing with this whole new concept which everybody is struggling to understand as well. So I think what you guys do is incredible, and I just hope that moving forward things do start to change. And I know they are changing, but like with anything, when you've accomplished so much, you still feel like you've got so much more to do. And I think that's where we're at with this, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we've got quite a long way to go still. Like I say, I think it's going to be a very slow, gradual process. And I think my reaction is that when I see people, so someone comes out, normally someone in the public eye, and you get that kind of reaction of, well, who cares? Why do you need to tell people? Or even people who, you know, mean it well, say, well, this just shouldn't be a thing. That can be quite dismissive, because the way I look at it as well is I go, for this to not be a thing, for someone to not have to come out, it's not just about people not discriminating. You've got to go all the way back to like when you're a child, you could be like 5, 6 and already, oh, have you got a, you know, oh, has he got a little girlfriend? Oh, that's cute, you know. And straight from in that, there's just those tiny little things. It's just ingrained in society, that kind of idea that your boy will have a girlfriend and your girl will have a boyfriend and your boy will grow up to be a boy, and all of these things. And I think that it will take quite a lot of conscious effort from a lot of people to kind of undo that, I think. And I think if you try and say something like that, that sounds like a really radical kind of change, but I think it's really simple. It's like it's that slight change of language, and we were saying about how important language is, and it's that change from, you know, oh yeah, you know, when you've got a wife, are you going to go and do this, to, you know, when you've got a partner or something like that. It could be, or at work, like Mike was saying, he says, you know, you start a new job and it's, oh, have you got a missus? Just, you know, have you got a partner? It's so easy to do, but also it can be such a conscious effort that people find it difficult. But as long as people are trying, that's all you can kind of ask for as well. And I think that's the other thing, because people fear saying the wrong thing. And we know people fear saying the wrong thing, but the intention is absolutely the most important thing. Because if you make a mistake, if you ask someone if they've got a missus and they say, actually no, I've got a husband, or I've got a boyfriend, or whatever, it's fine. It's if you just make that mistake and you go, oh sorry, yeah, I shouldn't have assumed, or whatever. Or like if you talk to a lot of trans people, I was talking to one of our trans members who said, look, I've been misgendered before. Someone's called me a he and I'm actually a her. But if they've corrected it, and if I correct them and then they change and they then refer to what I've asked for, that's fine. If you continue to misgender me, then that's a problem. It's the same thing. I think people just get it in their heads that we're going to try and dictate everything they can say or do, but it's just not the reality. What we're asking for is just a bit more love and a bit more acceptance, and I think that's what everyone wants.
Well, you've got all my love, boys, you know that.
I think the first two things for me that, you know, are very, very simple things that people can do is, you know, kind of, you know, say partner whenever you're talking. That, like Tom said, that's one of the biggest things you can possibly do. And also when you're talking about someone, choose the word they. You know, like how are they getting on? You know, it's a really, really simple change that you probably won't realise you're doing. People you're talking to probably won't realise you're doing, but the LGBT world will massively realise what you're doing and really appreciate that. And it's two very, very simple things that people can do. And you know, how they getting on, not how's he getting on, how they, you know, it's so easy.
And would you both agree? I'm just thinking here about kind of a message to those that are a little bit misunderstood, don't really understand the concept, don't really understand a lot of this kind of subject matter. We have to be prepared. I say we, I'm talking to you guys really, but you have to be prepared to give others the opportunity to make a mistake in order to learn and improve and become more understanding of something. So like you say, Tom, there's a window whereby you give people the benefit of the doubt and you give them that opportunity to rectify themselves. But it's when they don't do that and they continue to use the same derogatory terms and the same abusive kind of language, and purposefully so rather than by accident. You know, that's kind of for me where we're at, isn't it? So we can't change a culture, we can't change society without giving people the chance to learn and make those mistakes and then not do them again, I guess.
Absolutely. I think with a lot of my friends, I always say to my friends, and it's something I've always said from day one, and you know, any kind of if you've got a question you want to know, ask me. No matter how stupid it might sound, no matter how homophobic you might think it is, you know, just ask me, because I'd rather you ask me than ask someone else, and I can educate you or teach you, and if I don't know, I'll find out. And you know, I get some odd questions, I get some you know, quite offensive questions, but I don't mind because they're my friends and I know they don't mean it, you know, in that way. So I'd rather them come to me and ask me that question. And people DM me on Twitter and say, is this an acceptable thing to say? You know, and people, you know, that someone who's got, I think, 34,000 followers just sent me a random DM asking me, you know, I'm going to tweet this. Can I tweet this? And, you know, you kind of work with them. And if anyone's concerned about something they should say or what they can and can't say, just ask someone.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And it's exactly what I did, Mike, before you came on. I was speaking to Tom. I said, the questions that I'm asking you guys tonight, like, do I need to change anything? Am I saying the right things? And I come from a career and a profession whereby you'd like to think I know what I'm talking about. But even still, you know, I was a bit like, just need to be sure that if I'm saying, am I putting this politically correct? Is this the right thing? Is this the... If
it makes you feel better, and that's a very common thing, so don't worry. That's a lot of people ask that question. But yeah, it's nice that people ask that question, because it's... weirdly, I find it nice that friends ask me homophobic questions, because they're coming to me and they're wanting to learn, and I think that's the biggest thing there. And you know, like yourself saying, like you said there, asking, you know, can I say this? You want to learn, and you want to just be accepting of everyone, and that's just all we ask for. You know?
Yeah, I massively second that as well. And you think, for me, people just wanting to ask that question is the biggest thing. And I think, you know, unlike Mike, I get DMs all the time with people, can I say this? Or sorry if this is offensive, but, you know, what does this mean? And especially around things like different symbols and different and letters and things like that, and all that sort of thing, the kind of, I suppose, the jargon that we use within the community that maybe other people don't understand. And then, you know, you've also got people who just talk to us about their journeys. And I know, Aaron, we've got a mutual friend who has had that conversation with us about his journey, and about, you know, saying, actually, as a young guy, I was very homophobic, you know, and saying, and actually I wouldn't, and he said to me, and I won't obviously go into any details about who he is or whatever, but he said to me, you know, we're in a group chat, and he said, I wouldn't have been in this group 10 years ago because you're gay and you're in it. You know, I would have refused to be in it, but I've learned and I want to learn, and actually I now really understand what you're going through. And he's really unbelievably supportive. He's one of the most supportive people I know, and I think that's so important as well, to just see that people are willing to talk about their journeys. And like I said to him, and like I say to everyone else, if you want to talk to me and you want to tell me, you know, I used to think this, or I don't know about this, I don't understand that, actually that's so powerful for us to be able to have that education and things like that. Because also I know with the background that I've got, that actually, you know what, if I wasn't a part of the LGBTQ plus community, I probably could have been homophobic. You know, I know a lot of my friends were homophobic before they knew about me. And actually, it's that understanding that why is that, and the reality of that is a lack of understanding. It's a lack of awareness, and it's people not being kind of exposed to different ideas and different sexualities, different genders, and different things from growing up and things like that. And actually, if we can help expose people to it, you know, it's just brilliant. It's just break that stigma down. I think it's great.
A couple of things to educate people on. You know, certainly the older generation, you have to kind of say the older generation, like I'm not getting old, but you know, I've you know, I've still got a lot of friends back down in Brighton, and you know, one of my friends is over 50 or so, and it takes a lot of education for that person to, you know, kind of understand what they can and can't say and things. You know, I kind of grew up in the the South Park generation, I guess you could call it, where it's acceptable to call someone gay for fun, and that's that's just, I thought that was acceptable when I was growing up, because TV tells you it's acceptable, and you listen to TV, and it's only really the last kind of 5 or 10 years that we actually just start caring about everyone now, not just straight males, and everyone should really not be subject to that kind of abuse.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Listen, boys, it's been really, really great having you both on, and I think a valuable lesson is there for everybody this evening, even if it's just one thing. I will continue to support you, and I know a lot of our fan base will and do, and will. That won't stop. Are there any plans for Villa and Proud moving into the next season? Have you got any events coming up that people would like to know about? And I guess the last thing is, obviously that's for your area, Mike, but the last thing is, if not just through Twitter, but how do people get involved with you on a match day? Like, what's the community do on a match day that people can get involved with to help them kind of move towards coming out or feeling more confident about themselves? What can people do there?
I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, so I'm not going to throw myself in trouble here. But,
exclusive.
Yeah. There's potentially something that we're going to announce in the next 2 or 3 weeks, which really incorporates the match day experience and people, kind of being who they are. It's probably one of the biggest things that's happened at Villa and Proud in 3 or so years. So that. Well, when that comes out, you'll be the first person I'll tell all about it. Don't worry, I'll give you a little exclusive there. But for me, events-wise, we've got Pride coming up, and I purposely say to all my straight mates, go to Pride, and it's not gay Pride, it's just Pride, it's Birmingham Pride, and the amount of people who went last year, it was the first time it was on again for 2 years or so, who just had the best time as a straight person who go into it, and I just say just go to it. Go and be a spectator in it. Go to the music if music's your thing. Go to Pride and things. We're going to have a parade. We'll be in a parade in some form. Again, that's going to come out in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, look, there is something really big coming up. Social medias. Tom does an awesome job with kind of the socials, websites, and things. And just really stay tuned to all of that, because we've got a lot coming up.
Amazing. Yeah, awesome. And Tom, so just that last one then. So, people can contact the page, people can get in touch with you personally. Are you happy for people to do that? Are you happy for that kind of communication? Yeah,
absolutely. You can find me on Twitter, TomC2312_AVFC, bit of a mouthful, but it doesn't look like it on the page. It's all right. Villa and Proud's at Villa and Proud on Twitter, villaandproud.co.uk. We've got Villa and Proud on Instagram as well. We're looking at a few new channels as well that we can hopefully grow into, which again, I'm sure will come out in the next couple of weeks. And yeah, just honestly, anyone listening, just get in touch with either myself, Mike, any of the committee, or through Villa and Proud channels. And if it's something we can help you with, then we will. And if it's not, then we'll direct you to someone who can.
Awesome.
It'd be really nice I think off the back of this, if people do contact us, and anyone listening, I would say just reach out to us, have a chat with us, kind of if you've got any questions. I'm quite, I don't know what the word is. I'm, quite thick-skinned, I think it is. If anyone wants to throw any questions at me following this, feel free,
Yeah. I think that's a nice thing, Mike. I think that's a nice thing. Regardless of your sexuality, regardless of what community you feel you belong to, I think there's lots of opportunity here for those that are perhaps in need and are feeling like they should be a part of this community to contact you. But there's also the ones that want to learn and understand a little bit and ask a few questions and not feel like they're saying the wrong thing, because I think you're both two very, like you say, so you are stonewalled people. You're quite happy just to take the questions and answer them. And if there's no malice involved and there's no intent to harm or be offensive, then you're quite willing to take those questions on board and answer them as any human being would. So I think that's a really, really important thing. So, thank you both for being on. I've really enjoyed your company, really have. And I want to get down to some Villa and Proud stuff this next season, mate. I've not managed to do that yet, but I did promise you I would, so I will this year. So, let me know what's coming up, and I'll get down. Yeah, no problem. But until then, mate, I'll speak to you both very soon, and thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having us, mate.
Cheers, mate.
Up the Villa.